Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Namo tassa bhagavato arahato samma sambuddhassa. Buddham Dhammam Sangham Namasami. Good morning, everyone. Welcome to this Wednesday morning Sutta discussion program at the Empty Cloud Buddhist Monastery here in New Jersey. Thank you for Chintana, Rebecca, Madeline for being here on time and giving your kind comments, your kind greetings to us. We've been speaking about the factors of awakening, and this past weekend we were having some conversations about the factor of energy, right energy, right effort, as one of the factors, the third factor of awakening. And it reminded me, I'm bringing out this today's sutta, the sutta with Bhāradvāja the farmer, in connection to energy, because farming is a lot of work. It requires continuous, diligent, unremitting exertion of energy to keep everything together on the farm. If you came from a farming family, or you've ever visited a farm or read stories about farming in the early days, it's always one thing after another. The barn is falling apart, the equipment is falling apart, the cattle escapes from where they should be and needs to be rounded up. The fences have to be repaired. The plowing has to be done. Then there's the continuous danger of different disasters that can come from nature. You have to keep your eyes out. You have to develop a weather eye so you can tell what's going on with potential risk and hazards coming from the weather, and be able to take as much as possible prevention to protect from weather emergencies. And then afterwards, you've got a lot of work to clean up after different weather events that can happen. And you need to develop a cattle eye so that you know what's going on with your animals, and you can tell if they're showing subtle signs of not feeling well, being lethargic or off their feet, and having a very strong, this is the skillful aspect of compassion. You've got to be able to diagnose what the trouble is, and being able to quickly and accurately find out, is there something wrong with the water? Is there something wrong with the field? Is there something wrong with the food? Is there some contagious thing going around? And whatever it is, you've got to very quickly, promptly, accurately take care of it in order to protect those creatures who are depending on you. So, so much effort and work and skillful work and continuous work. One has to be ready at any time to jump into activity, to take care of what's necessary as a farmer. I'm not sure whether this is true or not. It's something I read in a book, that in the very ancient times, before agriculture was invented, people lived by means of hunting and gathering. They depended on the abundance that could be found in nature, whether by catching some kind of a wild animal, or by finding the fruits in the trees, or the roots or the edible things in nature. And the hunting and gathering style was much more relaxed than farming. Uh, People who lived like that um, would have, many hours in the day or many days in a row when all they had to do was to relax and rest, and they would make hammocks and sit around and tell stories to each other and develop a wisdom like that. But they didn't have the constant burden of work. But then when agriculture was invented, the population was able to grow. So there's many more humans living closer together. And I suppose that's a good thing, but the bad thing is it was so much work, so much effort. Um, Farming can also be taken as a metaphor for the cycle of samsara, the cycle of rebirth. So, depending on what kind of seed you plant, that's what kind of crops you receive. Just the same way that the karma that you plant um, produces its results. Just as the plants that you plant have their life cycle, especially in the northern hemisphere where we have a cold winter, then all of nature goes into a dormant phase during the cold period of the winter. The trees lose their leaves and the fruits all fall down, the harvest all falls down. And uh, in the northern hemisphere, we have our magical ritual. In the darkest part of the winter, we get an evergreen tree, which is able to somehow not be uh, losing its green needles during the wintertime. So that's a symbol of something that lives forever. And we put one of those trees inside of our house, and we plant different bubbles on the tree, and that represents the fruit which is going to come in the future based on our effort and our work in farming. So that because of the birth and death cycle of nature, even though nature comes to its death at certain times of year, I suppose in ancient India it would have been the dry season when everything dies back and the things go into their burrow, the nature seems to hide and become quiet. Um, so even though things die back in nature, they come back again. They die and they come back again. And so this is like um, a model of life, and it became a model for one of the basic types of ancient religions, religions that were uh, making a sacrament or recognizing something sacred in enacting this cycle of rebirth. So, just like Christians have the idea of Jesus who died and was born again, so many, many, many ancient peoples have got different figures of a hero or a god who dies and is born again. And, and so, in this way, the cycle of agriculture becomes a symbol for our spiritual life. And so, with those thoughts in mind, we could look at this sutta about Bhāradvāja, the farmer. Kasi is a term for a farmer. Bhāradvāja is one of the most prominent family names held by Brahmin families. So this is a Brahmin farmer. Already you might feel there's something questionable here because we think of the Brahmin caste as being um, a priestly caste, which is involved in uh, living in a relationship to the government and relationship to kings, providing ceremonies and rituals uh, connected to kingship, provided ceremonies and rituals related to people. But you don't think of them as being so poor that they are obliged to engage in farming. But at the same time, even the warrior class, that's the Buddhist clan, the Katya clan, um, is also the ruling class clan involved in government, involved in conquest and um, uh, uh, military conquest and gaining territory. But at the same time, the Bodhisattva's father was participating in the plowing festival, right? So my idea is that in ancient times, even the highest of the caste system would not be separated and isolated from the cycle of farming. So they would be still connected with farming. At one time, the Buddha was staying in the land of the Magadhans in the southern hills, near the Brahmin village of Ekanala. Very rarely in the suttas do we see the Buddha visiting the southern region. It could be that they didn't see the Buddha, and that's why this Brahmin was so surprised and startled when he saw the recluses, saw the Buddha and his Sangha, because he hasn't seen them before, because this is not a part of the world that the Buddha visits. The Brahmin, Bhāradvāja, the farmer, has harnessed around 500 plows, it being the season for sowing. So it must be that he's quite a wealthy farmer who has got a lot of people underneath him if he's got 500 plows. It might be that Bhāradvāja's involvement is a ceremonial involvement at the beginning of the season. Then the Buddha, robed up in the morning, taking his bowl and robe, he went to where Bhāradvāja the farmer was working. Now, at that time, Bhāradvāja the farmer was distributing food. This must have been an aspect of the ceremony that the food from the previous harvest is now being distributed to the people at the time of the plowing season. They need to have food which is laid by even at the beginning of the farming season. It may be many weeks before we start to have edible food crops coming in. So there's that necessity to have some food laid by, and that's the food that he's distributing at this time. My ancestors were Irish people, and the time of planting was one of the most hardest, almost a famine time of year, because the crops that my ancestors grew, that was potato. The potato doesn't last 12 months or even 9 months. And so the potatoes don't keep throughout the next year. And so my people had to survive on picking wild greens and catching some rabbits or something like that to survive. So it could be that this harvest, this is just my imagination, when Bhāradvāja is distributing food to the people, all of the workers under him are in a time of shortage, they're in a time of need. And when he's giving from the abundance of his stores that he has as a wealthy farmer, that's symbolizing the abundance that's going to come in the upcoming growing season. So the Buddha went to where the distribution was taking place and stood to one side. Bhāradvāja the farmer saw him standing for alms and said to him, "I plow and sow, ascetic, and then I eat. You too should plow and sow, then you may eat." "I too plow and sow, Brahmin, then I eat." He said, "I don't see worthy Gautama with a yoke or plow or plowshare or goad or oxen. And yet he says, I too plow and sow, Brahmin, then I eat." Again, this is a very typical literary device that you have at the beginning of many suttas. You get a puzzle or a dilemma, and then the storyline of the sutta is solving the riddle, solving the puzzle. Then Bhāradvāja the farmer addressed the Buddha in verse. "You claim to be a farmer, but I don't see you farming. Tell me you're farming when asked, so I can recognize your farming." That's his question. And the Buddha then gives a series of similes. He gives us a series of metaphors. Okay. Faith is my seed. That's saddha. So saddha is in many, many different versions of our gradual training, the very launching point, the beginning point for getting on this training sequence, this training path. Everything launches from faith, launches from confidence, and the source of confidence. What comes before confidence? I can think of two different answers. So, for a disciple, confidence could come about by the sight of a true person, by the sight of an enlightened, virtuous teacher, by seeing how the truth is manifest with that teacher. But then, for a bodhisattva, where does the faith come from? So, this faith, I believe I'm going to associate that with the internal determination of a bodhisattva to discover the cause of suffering in this world. We see this in a few suttas where they say that dukkha is the ground for the awakening, the path of training, the path of progress is arising from dukkha. So, in the case of the bodhisattva, because of his cultivating the virtues of compassion, kindness, sila, truth, and the other paramis. Then when he saw the sick person, the aging person, the dead person, and recognizing with his tremendous courage, not discounting, but recognizing the full extent of the suffering that's involved with the cycle of birth and death, not sweeping it under the rug, not ignoring it, but recognizing there must be a cause. So it's like his faith is related to his energy, his determination to discover the cause of suffering. And with that determination, he pursues his investigation until he realizes the Four Noble Truths, realizes the cause of suffering and the end of suffering. And so that may be why the Buddha is able to say, faith is my seed, even though he doesn't have faith in the traditional sense that a disciple has faith in the Buddha or faith in the Triple Gem. We have faith in those things because we've received them. But the Buddha didn't receive them from another. He developed that from within based on his previous paramis during the many, many lifetimes. And then he said, fervor is my rain. Tapo is my rain. So tapo is referring to the ascetic practices. It's referring to, in the other traditions, when one voluntarily endures hardship and makes extreme effort. With that extreme effort, the ascetics hoped to obtain liberation from defilements. They hoped to obtain purification through extreme effort. Tapo also means heat or ardency, and so some of the ascetics of the early times would walk on coals as a practice of ardency to obtain purification, or they would lie down on a bed of nails in order to obtain purification. So the Bodhisattva himself, he did try those practices. He tried the practice of starving the body as an extreme ascetical practice, but that practice was not his source of awakening. But he also, in previous lifetimes, as the Bodhisattva, practiced the paramis to the extremity. He practiced all of the paramis, the dedication to truth, the dedication to generosity, the generation to kindness, and so on. All of those practices he did to the ultimate level. He was able to even give up his own life again and again in the practice of generosity. And it's because then that fervor of practicing the paramis became the rain that was nurturing the germination of the seed, right? Creating the condition for the seed to germinate. Then he says, wisdom is my yoke and plow. So wisdom is panya. It's a type of knowing. It's a strong form of knowing. The plow is the part of the instrument that the tool that is cutting the ground and turning the soil, right? And the yoke is the part of the tool that's bound to a pair of cattle keeping them so the two cattle are yoked together to pull with their great strength. Or it could be more than two. You could have, you know, many dozens of animals who are yoked together in a string. Uh, but typically, you see like two animals yoked together, and they're pulling the plow, and the farmer is um, guiding the plow to make sure that it's at the correct depth, so it will cut and turn over the soil. So uh, the the yoke uh, has two symbolic meanings uh, that we see in the sutras. Um, one is being yoked to samsara, being tied to samsara, where we have to endlessly keep on working day after day after day, um, and a work that never ends. Um, and the other um, metaphor that we see about the yoke is that samatha and vipassana, in calm and insight, are sometimes said to be yoked together. So at the moment of awakening, um, in some cases, those two factors are working together, each one perfectly balanced to each other, pulling together in harmony. So there's that aspect of um, skillfulness of the work, in this idea that wisdom is the yoke and plow, that wisdom is able to keep the balance, keep steering in the right direction, keep controlling the plow so that it's cutting through at the right depth. Um, the metaphor continues. Um, Conscience is my draft pole, and mind my strap. Uh, so conscience is hiri. Um, hiri is a wonderful quality to cultivate for spiritual success, right? Um, Conscience is a very good translation for hiri. Uh, it is one's um, internalized basic sense of right and wrong, knowing the difference between what's skillful and unskillful, knowing the difference between what's harmful and helpful. And then uh, whenever the mind goes in the direction of something that's harmful, whenever there's an impulse to do some action which is hurtful to oneself, hurtful to another, then we hope that we will have a well-developed hiri, a well-developed conscience, and that conscience will spring up and stop us from going any further with those unskillful states, unskillful thoughts, unskillful wishes, unskillful actions. So uh, hiri goes together with hiri otapa goes together, and then but in this case they're just talking about hiri. Hiri used to be translated as shame. So okay, so you would be ashamed to do something wrong, depending on how you were brought up. When you were um, a little small child, if you did something wrong, and your mother, your father, or your caregiver would scold you very brutally, or if they would smack you and punish you, uh, then you become afraid to do something wrong because you're afraid of punishment. But if you have a different kind of parent or caregiver who is teaching you the difference between right and wrong, setting an example um, in even a more gentle way, guiding you away from what's wrong and towards what's right, then it may be that your conscience is not so much tied up with fearfulness. We should be afraid to do what's wrong if we understand that doing a wrong thing will hurt us and will hurt others. And so one doesn't want to do that. So there is a fear element involved, but it doesn't need to be the trembling, disabling kind of fear. You just need enough fear to be able to stop. And you only need that for a second in order to stop. You don't need to be chronically fearful or chronically ashamed, chronically remorseful, chronically scared of the punishment that's coming to you. Instead, if your conscience is well developed, it actually protects you in the first place. So you're not worrying about consequences because you were protected before you incurred those kind of mistakes. The draft pole is the part of the plow that connects the blade section to the yoke, in case you wanted to know that. And then it says mano is, the mind is my strap. So the strap is the thing which is I'm not completely sure, but I think the strap is part of the paraphernalia that keeps the work animals, keeps the beast in line with the rest of the tool. I know about the strap in a chariot or a carriage. When a carriage is going downhill, it has a tendency to like run into the animals, right? So sometimes the animals are pulling, and sometimes the animals are braking and preventing the carriage from rolling forward and going out of control. And I believe that the strap is like a brake. I'm not sure why the mind is my strap in this simile, except that the mind is an essential element in the work that the Buddha is doing. So he's doing his work with the mind. We know Manopubankama Dhamma, all actions are led by the mind. Mind is the leader, mind is the maker. Act or speak with a pure state of mind, and happiness follows as your shadow follows you without departing. So the mind is the essential precursor to all of the karma that we make, all of the actions that we do, all of the work that we do always has to be led by the mind. The mind is where the intention comes to be created. So mind is both the seat of understanding, the seat of experience, and it's also the seat where intention is created. Then it says, mindfulness, my plowshare and goad. We have more technical instruments. Who knows what a plowshare is, as opposed to a plow? Huh? Okay, so who knows what a goad is? Yeah, okay. So the goad is the stick that you use to urge the beast on to go faster, to increase their energy. I believe the plowshare is actually the knife No, there's two parts to a plow, okay? The blade part of the plow has got a knife that goes first, that cuts the ground, and then it's got a sort of a curvy bit, which is the plowshare, and the plowshare turns over the furrow, okay? So that's, you could say that in terms of what's happening to the soil, that's like the tip of the spear, uh, the pointed part of the arrow, um, the part that's, if you take a metaphor of a battle, okay, so the point is what's at the front of the line, the front of the parade, the front of the army. I always notice that circumstances choose in different contests that happen in the world as a result of karma or something. I don't know why. Why is it that the weakest people are the most gentlest people, are the nicest people, are sometimes made to be the plowshare that are put like at the front of the army, who have to bear the brunt of all the challenges and all the difficulties of the contest that's going on. And then, the general is, somewhere behind with his binocular looking over the field and watching the army. So the general is safe. He's not necessarily in danger because he's way back. And some other small, comparatively innocent person is at the tip. But in this case, mindfulness, the sati, I believe it's the aspect of the mindfulness that the mindfulness is the part of our practice that remembers what we should be doing, and that has that continuous awareness, continuous attention, that remembers to be awake, that remembers to be aware. And so the work that we're doing, the field that we've got to work, is the field of our own internal mind and heart, our own internal karma. We're dealing with so many things that are subtle and hard to see. And so we won't be able to see them, we'll miss them altogether unless the mindfulness is very bright, very clear, and very continuous, very present. He goes on, guarded in body and speech. I restrict my intake of food. So the gutta is the guard, the kaya. This is again, I think, coming to aspects of kamma, the karma that we make. So it's developing that metaphor of the field and the work that the Buddha made, or the work that the Bodhisattva made. He's performing the karma that leads to the end of all karma, just as the farmer is doing a kind of a karma that leads to going around and around, and hopefully doing wholesome karma, or whatever kind of karma you do leads to more rebirth or more cycles and more work to do. So that work that's endless. So the avoiding evil actions because of having that conscience, right? You are guarded in the body and guarded in speech, so you don't make any mistakes of body with your physical actions. You don't make any mistakes with your speech because of that quality of being guarded. And then ahara udare yato, restricting the intake of food. This is one of the very preliminary aspect of the training that's given to any monk or any trainee who comes to the Buddha, even before they come into the more subtle psychological or wisdom aspects of their practice, even before they come to the practice of meditation, even as a basic aspect of the morality of a renunciate is to know the measure of food, to not be greedy with food, to not just simply grab all the food that you can, but to take just enough food, only the amount of food that's necessary to sustain the body and support the spiritual practice. Then he says, I use truth as my scythe. The scythe is could be used to cut down the defilements, to cut down the hindrances, to cut down the weeds, and that's done with the scythe. So that's the strong energy. But then you've got this opposite metaphor, makes the beautiful poetry. Gentleness is my release. So there's both aspects, just as you have the aspect of samatha and vipassana. You've got the aspect of cutting and letting go. So there's no use to cut down the weeds of the defilements if you then grasp them and hold on to them and cling on to them. But you cut them down and let them go. Energy is my harnessed beast, transporting me to the sanctuary from the yoke. The dura, that's a pun. So the beast is a beast of burden. So you have the burden, but it's moving you to sanctuary from the yoke, the yoga kema, which is an epithet for nibbana, the sanctuary from the yoke. So then take the yoke off. It's finished. Without turning back, it goes to where there is no sorrow. That's how to do the farming that has freedom from death as its fruit. When you finish this farming, you will be released from all suffering. So this is the Buddha's beautiful verse of the metaphor of the work along our path of practice, along the path of our gradual training, coming to go in only one direction, only in the direction of freedom, in the direction that leads to the release from all suffering. Now we come to the second half of this story. Time has gone by. Bhāradvāja the farmer poured milk rice in a large bronze cup and gave it to the Buddha. May worthy Gautama eat the milk rice. The worthy one is a farmer, for the worthy Gautama does the farming that has freedom from death as its fruit. And the Buddha answers very strictly, food enchanted by a verse isn't fit for me to eat. That's not the principle of those who see Brahman. The Buddhas cast aside things enchanted with verses. Since there's such a principle, Brahman, that's how they live. Serve with other food and drink. The consummate one, the great seer, with defilements ended, with remorse stilled, for he is the field for the seeker of merit. I'll finish the story, then I'll explain it. Then Brother Gautama, to whom I should give the milk rice. Brahmin, I don't see anyone in the world with its gods, Maras, divinities, this population with its ascetics and Brahmins who can properly digest this milk rice, except the realized one or one of his disciples. But the Buddha refuses the food. Well then, Brahmin, throw out the milk rice where there's little that grows, or drop it into water that has no living creatures. So Bhāradvāja the farmer dropped the milk rice in water that had no living creatures. When the milk rice was placed in water, it sizzled and hissed, steaming and fuming, as if there was an iron cauldron that had been heated all day. When it was placed in the water, it sizzled and hissed, steaming and fuming. Bhāradvāja was shocked and awestruck, and because of his amazement, he is being first convinced by the verses and then amazed by the miracle of the rice steaming and fuming. Then he went to the Buddha, bowed with his head at the Buddha's feet, and gave the stock phrases as if he was writing what was overturned, revealing the hidden, pointing out the path to the lost, lighting a lamp in the dark so people with clear eyes can see. He's made the teaching clear, and he goes for refuge to the Buddha. This particular story about the offering of the food appears in this version in the Sutta Nipata. There is a parallel version of this sutta in the Samyutta Nikaya, which doesn't have the story about the steaming rice. So one part of the meaning is that a Buddha does not offer teachings in exchange for food. So the farmer had denied the gift of the food by saying the Buddha was not worthy. And then the Buddha recited his poem, which proved to the farmer that he was worthy. And then the farmer offered the food. But to provide teachings in trade for the requisites of life is a terrible, dangerous, deeply unwholesome practice. It's a deeply corrupting practice. If any Buddhist monk was to charge a fee to receive the Dhamma, or to say that you have to give gifts in order to receive the Dhamma teachings, that would be a profound corruption of Buddhism. It would be a corruption of the Sangha. And so the Buddha gave this teaching, or maybe displayed this in one of the commentaries. It said that he caused the rice to steam and hiss like that, and it was because he was emphasizing the great danger, the tremendous corruption, defiling danger of giving Dhamma teachings in trade for requisites. And he was setting an example for future generations. It's for this reason that very often, if you see a monk, the monk is very cautious to give the Dhamma teaching later, after the requisites, because they're trying to avoid the appearance of this kind of a risk. It's also true that sometimes monks give teachings at any time, but they're always giving it as a pure gift. Generosity, the Dhamma is always, must be given as a gift. And so even if it was a profoundly dangerous and terrible thing for a disciple of the Buddha to be commercializing the Dhamma in that way, how much more dangerous would it be if a Buddha, if a Sammasambuddha was to be corrupt in that way? It would be impossible. And so that was the one of the explanations. Another explanation for this part of the story is that in the Brahmanical culture, the correct recitation of the Vedas was considered to have a powerful sacramental or a magical kind of a power. And people did typically offer sacrifices in order to receive some good. Very often they want to secure a place in heaven for their deceased relatives, or to protect their deceased relatives from falling into a bad fate. And so they would make a sacrificial offering, and the Brahmin priest is reciting the particular verse. And so the gift is given magical force by the recitation, and in order to make it effective in achieving the good. Or you could say, in another case, coming back to the beginning of my talk, when the earliest of the ancient people were in the darkest part of the winter, and they were hoping that spring would come, they would make offerings to the gods, requesting, if you suppose it's December, saying, oh God of the sun or the weather or the spring, please bring the warm weather back so that we can live and have another harvest. And lo and behold, it always happened. Every year, consistently, the spring always came back on time. But it was like they had an idea that even the god was subject to rules. And so the god is required, having caused the cold and the darkness to come, the god is required to bring spring at a subsequent time. So the god is subjected to the spring, and the religious people who've got the wisdom to understand what the law is, what the Dhamma is, use their verses to remind God that he has to bring spring back. So this is all of the, the layers of the meaning that could be involved with the ceremonies of the Brahmin Bhāradvāja in his having the ceremony of giving out the food when he's planting the seed. He's giving out the food because he's ordering the gods, please make this. You not please. You must. I'm forcing you to cause the harvest to come by my verses and by this gift of food. And then the Buddha is asserting that the power of his magic is way, way, way at a completely different level than the magic that the Brahmin possesses. So the power of the Buddha's teaching is at a different scale altogether. And so he defeats the supposed magic of the Brahmins. So that's two different ways. This second idea is taken from more of a comparative approach, comparing this poem with other types of mythology and types of studies that we can do about a variety of the ancient religions, not only the early Vedas and the Brahmanical religions, but also early religions throughout human history. And then the idea about the Buddha giving a lesson to the future generations not to corrupt the Dhamma by trading teachings for requisites is the other part of the meaning. If we trade the requisites, if we trade Dhamma for requisites, then maybe we're just like an ordinary commonplace farmer who's planting some karma. We're doing some deeds and we get some results. And we're doing good karmas to get some good results, in the sense that we help people reduce their suffering a little bit. But we're not doing the kind of karma that leads to the end of karma. We're not doing the kind of actions, the kind of practice that leads to the freedom from the yoke, that leads to the end of suffering, as long as we're doing it that way. But when Dhamma is a pure gift, then it has that power. Okay, so I know I used up all the time because this is such an easy sutta. I was taking my time giving you the detailed explanation of farming and plowing. So here I'm seeing one question. Does this mean that lay teachers who charge for meditation classes are inherently harmful? They're not practicing in accord with the instruction of the Buddha. And according to the instructions of the Buddha, that kind of practice would not lead to the end of dukkha. Or just potentially corrupting, but not necessarily so. If I know that sometimes you have a Dhamma center and they have certain expenses for the food, the lodging, and so forth. And the center will be charging the retreatants a fee to help to cover the expenses. And then there's a separate basket, which is to provide for the supporting the teacher. And the separate basket is called a dana basket. So that's a purely voluntary. And in that case, that teacher has protected their purity, even though the center was charging some kind of fee for the expenses of the center. And thank you, Chinsana, for your very kind remark. I know that's not a question. And I appreciate your kind thoughts. So we may try to take the work that we have today, even, technology, even that trying to make your computer operate properly, trying to get all of the different things that are constantly happening with your computer and all the apps to operate constantly is every bit as technical as these technical parts of the plow. And so if with your mindfulness, you're remembering your state of mind, remembering your ethics, remembering what's wholesome and not wholesome, and also if you are constantly, continuously reflecting and thinking about the teachings of the Buddha, reflecting about the Dhamma, reflecting about um, the path of practice, reflecting on the different aspects of the Dhamma, reflecting about the different aspects of the Dhamma that you bring into play to keep your practice going in the direction you want it to go, being properly balanced, then it might happen that even if you're coming to some glitch with your software and you're fixing the glitch, uh, you may be able to come up with some Dhamma metaphors to think about each different type of work that you have to do through the day, how that Dhamma is similar and related to some aspect of the Dhamma that is supporting you in the Dhamma work that you're doing. And in that way, you can continuously train yourself in keeping the different parts of the Buddha's teaching in mind, even while you're doing your ordinary, mundane, everyday kind of work. So with that, we come to the end of this sutta class. We can close by saying sadhu, 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 sadhu.